In the previous episode, we saw that Leping was amazed after seeing the hot spring. He couldn't take his eyes off the scenery. The stream of water flowed in reverse, rising upward from the lake to one of the floating islands. Even that upside-down water pillar is made possible by magic. His voice was full of wonder, while behind him, the dwarf king watched calmly. Leping gazed in awe, his eyes wide with admiration. That's way too intense, he thought. If it were me, I definitely couldn't pull it off. He couldn't help but exclaim with excitement. This was a remarkable feat, a flawless fusion of magic and forging. Upon hearing this, the dwarf king tried to mask the flaws in his creation with a dazzling exterior, but he couldn't fool the hero. With just one glance, the hero had seen through it and commented bluntly, "Too exaggerated." His judgment was sharp and accurate, leaving no room for doubt. The hero had even entrusted the dwarf king with a divine weapon. Yet, the dwarf king couldn't help but feel utterly ashamed, as though he didn't deserve such an honor. Elif and Mr. Boss also looked disappointed. They glanced at each other, and in an instant, everyone dropped to their knees, realizing they had disappointed the hero. But when Leping tilted his head toward them, he was confused. Seeing the group kneeling on the ground, he scratched his head and chuckled to himself, assuming innocently, they must have just come off a long shift. Looks like they're completely worn out. Leping sighed as he looked at the kneeling trio. To be honest, he only planned to ask them for help, not bring them to an overly luxurious floating hot spring resort like this. Everyone respectfully responded, "Yes, we understand." But seeing how seriously they took it, Leping rubbed his neck and smiled slightly, saying that since they had gone this far, he would have to give them a little something in return. The ground trembled beneath his feet. The kneeling trio watched in awe and fear as he approached, the atmosphere growing heavier with each step. Even without trying, his overwhelming presence made it clear who stood before them. Elif and Mr. Boss trembled, their faces drenched in cold sweat. A mixture of fear and disbelief washed over them as they realized the gravity of what was coming. Just as the tension reached its peak, Leping casually extended a basket full of shiny, colorful fruits and said cheerfully, "A reward. Here you go." This was the reward Leping had been talking about. Mr. Boss stared in stunned silence, a sparkle of disbelief in his eyes as the looming divine punishment turned out to be a fruit basket. With a bright smile, Leping said, "These are fresh fruits I just picked today. I hope they're of some help to you." Mr. Boss, relieved, carefully accepted the glowing basket of fruit, still unsure of what to make of it. He glanced up at Leping and asked in confusion, "Mr. Leping?" Leping scratched his head awkwardly and replied, "I didn't pick that much, so I'll leave it to you to share with everyone. It's my thanks for helping to build this hot spring. I do have more fruit, but since we'll be staying here for a few days, I need to save the rest as ingredients for Elisa. If she's not satisfied, this whole vacation will be a disaster." Meanwhile, the towering dwarf king stepped forward respectfully, his voice filled with sincerity. He asked Leping to allow him, once again, to seek his guidance on the art of forging. Leping quickly waved his hand with a modest smile and replied, "I wouldn't dare call it teaching. You're far too kind, King of the Dwarves." The dwarf king looked up earnestly, his brows furrowed with frustration. "No matter how hard I try," he said, "even when I pay close attention to every single detail, I still can't recreate the kind of weapon you forged. Just where am I falling short?" Leping sighed inwardly. "It's happening again," he thought. "Since the dwarf king is one of Elizabeth's loyal subjects, every time he sees me, the so-called boyfriend of the demon queen, he makes sure to ask about forging techniques, just to show his respect." In the background, Elizabeth stood gracefully, arms crossed, silently observing. Leping stroked his chin thoughtfully. Since he went out of his way to ask, he thought, I should respond sincerely. I can't afford to disrespect Elizabeth. He looked up and explained, "To me, effort isn't about obsessing over every small detail. It's more of a feeling. In short, stop relying solely on your eyes. Try using your heart to feel it. That should be close enough." Then, with a sheepish smile, he added inwardly, "My skills aren't that great. What I really meant is, once you get used to it, your hands just sort of know what to do. It's more about instinct." Upon hearing this, the dwarf king's eyes widened, as if struck by lightning. A single sentence brings sudden enlightenment. The realization exploded in his mind like a thunderclap. "Don't rely on your eyes to see?" he exclaimed in shock, as though the truth of the universe had just been unveiled before him. The dwarf king's hands trembled as he looked at them in awe, a new light in his eyes. "So that's it?" he exclaimed. With just a few simple words, the hero had shattered his understanding. Kuro Makudingu, after 7 centuries of forging, It was as if he had been going in circles all this time, chasing hollow perfection, all the formulas he had mastered, the precise angles he had honed, and the exact timing he had followed suddenly felt meaningless without true instinct and feeling. He stared down at his calloused hands, the realization sinking deeper with each passing second. No matter how much I magnified the details or obsessed over perfection, he thought, that wasn't real devotion. It was just me getting lost in my own rigid mindset. Clenching his fist, a spark of clarity lit up his eyes. True forging is something that shouldn't be limited by anything external. With a roar of awakening, the Dwarf King drove his fingers into his own eyes and tore them out, blood bursting forth in gruesome streaks. True forging should never rely on sight. Upon seeing this, Leping froze in shock, lightning bolts of disbelief flashing through his mind as he shouted, "What are you doing?" His wide eyes and dropped jaw couldn't begin to express the horror of witnessing such a gruesome act. Blood streamed from his hollow sockets as the Dwarf King stood tall and solemn. Despite the agony, his expression radiated clarity and reverence. With a deep bow of gratitude, he thanked Leping for his guidance. It wasn't just thanks for words. It was gratitude for enlightenment that had reshaped his very path. Bathed in golden light, blood still trickling from his empty eyes, the Dwarf King declared with unwavering calm, "I have attained enlightenment." His voice was serene, like a man who had shed all doubt and finally grasped the truth he had sought for centuries. Mr. Boss respectfully congratulated the Dwarf King on advancing to the Demon King realm, but seeing his eyes, he asked Elif if there was anything she could do. Elif nodded with confidence, saying they could use plant magic to begin the recovery process, and she would arrange it immediately. However, the Dwarf King raised a calm hand to stop her. "That won't be necessary. At this moment, I see more clearly than I ever have before." Though blind, his heart and spirit had never been more awakened. As the golden light bathed the surreal realm of floating islands and glowing bridges, the Dwarf King's senses awakened in a new way. Every imperfection in the forging ground, he could now feel them clearly, not with his eyes, but with his heart. His connection to the craft had transcended the physical. He now perceived the world through pure intuition. Standing beneath the golden light, he slowly nodded, finally understanding the meaning behind Leping's words. Leping looked at him, deep in thought. Those glasses were actually a power limiter for the Dwarf King? As expected, the way these people think, it's beyond what an ordinary guy like me can comprehend. The Dwarf King, blood still streaming from his eyes, nodded and admitted that the forging assistant device he had once proudly relied on had become the very thing that held him back. Bowing slightly toward Leping, he thanked him for revealing the truth. But there was still one more question he wanted to ask. Before he could, Elizabeth's voice called from behind. "Leping, are you done with your drama already?" She turned to the Dwarf King and warned, "You've done enough. If you're too greedy, you might not be able to handle the consequences." The Dwarf King immediately dropped to his knees and bowed deeply. "What Her Majesty the Demon Queen says is absolutely correct." Watching the scene unfold, Leping blinked in silence. "I don't even know what's going on. But if Elizabeth says it's right, then it has to be. With everyone treating me so respectfully, I guess I'll just enjoy the spotlight while it lasts," he thought, half confused, half amused. After that, with a professional smile and a graceful gesture, Miss Pythias extended her hand forward, asking them to follow as she guided them to their suite. As the group crossed the plaza, Pythias explained, "The destination is a little farther ahead, so we'll be taking a shuttle from here." Her voice echoed lightly as they strolled through the scenic path. Then, pausing behind some bushes, she glanced around cautiously. "The size of these leaves, they're pretty much the same," she murmured with subtle suspicion. From her pocket, she produced a small red and black capsule and flicked it through the air with precise force. It landed silently atop a large leaf nearby. The capsule burst into smoke with a soft hiss, unfolding into a strange mechanical object shaped like a sleek, leaf-patterned shuttle. The group turned their heads as the newly summoned vehicle settled gently on the ground. With a proud smile, Miss Pythias explained, "This is my latest invention, combining both science and magic. The spatial capsule stores the shuttle's components, while the magical plant acts as its power source." She gestured toward the leaf and capsule, highlighting the elegant fusion of technology and arcane energy. As shimmering lights gathered beneath them, the leaf-shaped vehicle slowly lifted off the ground. The magical transport, powered by nature and fueled by arcane technology, began its smooth ascent, ready to carry them toward their next destination. Leping was amazed. Looking around with admiration, he remarked, "Compared to the old mechanical flying fish, This one is way quieter. Pythias lowered her gaze thoughtfully. I've received so much inspiration from everyone, she murmured. She recalled, it was Sister Elizabeth who first enlightened me about the magic system, and that mechanical dog belonging to the overly bold hero. Even though I only saw it 3 times, it continues to stir endless creativity within me. Her eyes sparkled with determination as her thoughts deepened. If I'm not mistaken, that must be the pinnacle of science. Emilia narrowed her eyes in annoyance and muttered, Emilia is clearly the master's mount. So why are they even riding in something like this? With a smug smile, Pythias replied, it's just a means of transportation. Of course it can be replaced at any time. Emilia flared up in rage, shouting, you damn mophead! How dare you question the status of this dragon queen? Just then, Elizabeth, her expression calm and her eyes sharp beneath the wide-brimmed hat, spoke with quiet authority. Stop wasting time, Pythias. Let's depart immediately. Thinking privately, once they reach the room, no one will be able to stop this queen and Leping from having fun. Elizabeth gave the signal. At her command, Pythias gripped the handle firmly and began operating the controls, setting the leaf-shaped vessel into motion. The vessel glided gracefully through the sky, weaving between floating islands and vivid pink treetops. Below them, lush gardens and stone fountains adorned the palace grounds. Leping stood at the front, eyes gleaming with excitement as he pointed toward the palace gardens. Behind him, Elizabeth followed closely, her gaze calm yet curious as she admired the vibrant scenery. On a quiet floating island, bathed in warm sunlight, a single cherry blossom tree stood in full bloom, its pink petals swaying gently in the breeze. Beneath its shade sat a bizarre sight, a gleaming golden toilet placed neatly on the grassy hill. Farther ahead, an enormous floating water park hovered in the sky, an explosion of colorful slides, twisting tubes, and towering platforms all built around a shimmering pool. Another cluster of miniature islands appeared, each one covered in soft grass and scattered with plush toys of every shape and size. Towering over them sat an oversized stuffed bear, surrounded by smaller animals, colorful dice, and balls. Smiling warmly, Pythias told Leping, all of the floating islands feature different themed hot springs. If the two of you wish to visit any of them, feel free to summon me at any time. Pointing ahead at a large wooden door, she added, that's your personal room. Leping smiled brightly and nodded. We'll be counting on you. They soon reached the floating island where, at its center, stood a grand, ornately carved wooden wardrobe, the door to their private suite. Pythias set the vessel down and explained with a gentle smile, if you need anything later, just press the bell in your room. I'll come right away to assist you. Leping turned to her and nodded. That's enough for now. You should take a break, too. After Pythias left, Elizabeth turned to Leping with a gentle smile, her crimson eyes soft beneath the brim of her wide hat. We've arrived, she said warmly. Leping met her gaze, his expression relaxed and content as they stood amidst the sunlit meadow of their floating retreat. Elizabeth's crimson eyes gleamed with a curious, playful glint. A faint blush colored her cheeks as she tilted her head slightly and asked with a teasing smile, what kind of surprise do you have in store for your queen? Leping smiled softly, golden eyes twinkling with excitement. Just wait, you'll find out very soon. Let's head inside first. He kept the rest to himself, determined to reveal it at the most romantic moment. Hand in hand, they walked toward the towering wooden doors. The heavy panels creaked open, and a brilliant light poured from within, washing over them as they stepped forward, their silhouettes framed against the glowing threshold. Inside was a cozy, elegantly arranged space. The bed was adorned with rose petals forming the shape of a heart, facing large glass windows that framed a serene view outside. Leping's eyes lit up in surprise as he stepped inside. Elizabeth's gaze drifted to the bed, her eyes softening as she noticed the rose petals. A faint blush touched her cheeks, and a small smirk curved her lips. Today is the perfect moment for us to take the most important step forward, she thought, her eyes gleaming with anticipation and mischief. But just then, Emilia burst in energetically, her face glowing with joy as she spread her arms wide. Surrounded by fluttering flower petals, she exclaimed how comfortable the place felt, and happily declared that she could sleep here with her master tonight. The romantic moment shattered instantly. Elizabeth's expression darkened. Without hesitation, she pulled out a Pokeball and stored Emilia away. Leping's eyes widened in surprise. He recognized the little figurine on the desk. It was the Pokeball he had created long ago just for fun. Elizabeth glanced at him casually. Don't worry, I just thought it was convenient, so I used it to store Emilia's contract space inside. She tossed the Pokeball into an open backpack and then stepped forward, Wrapping her arms around Leping's neck, she gazed into his eyes with a soft yet passionate expression. "Don't get distracted by anything else," she whispered. "Right now, it's just the two of us, and no one is going to disturb us anymore."